So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
You like music, you like weed, well, we gonna be good friends indeed. This is how much I like more than smoking. You know I blame it on industry. I blame it on my own hypocrisy. It's education. Politicians, no one's willing to step up and speak.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the P.A.C.E Radio Show, live here at lifestyleradio.ca. My name is Al Graham. During our intro music, the Killing Time Band says, more of us need to speak up, and we're here to help them and you to achieve that goal. The guests here on the P.A.C.E Radio Show are Canadian cannabis advocates who talk to us about what they are doing to end cannabis prohibition and spread education. Tonight, my joint host, who is making her first appearance as one of the joint hosts here on the Lifestyle Radio with us, but nowhere near new to being on radio, is the well-known Alison Myrden. Hi, Alison. How are you there?
Hey, Al. It's the Al and Al show tonight with a special guest who we're going to talk about any second. Thanks so much for having me on, gentlemen. I am a big fan of both shows.
Good. So, Alison, I haven't talked to you a lot recently. So what have you been up to?
Sadly enough, Al, I've been a little under the weather the last few months, fighting my own issues without having my necessary and allotted prescription for medical cannabis. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'm still doing tons of work in the community and online every chance that I get, lobbying the Prime Minister, the government's office, everybody from the former Chief of Police in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, Bill Blair, to the present Health Minister, to the present Justice Minister, Bill Morneau. I can't even think of all the things I do on a regular basis now. The work never stops. Never stops.
Alison, we appreciate everything that you do, and like you say, if you can't get her up and around, and if you're under the weather, you can still be able to do some writing and make contact with an MP somewhere within our government.
And that's all we ask of everybody, Al. Everybody you can. If you can't make your voice heard, get your pen out.
Yeah. Before we bring in our guests, I got one more question for you.
Yes.
Well, it's good to have you back on the show. It's been a while.
Thank you.
And you've always had interesting guests.
Thank you.
Look forward to hearing them as we go along. And quickly, thoughts on being live?
Again, I love the fact that the shows are live on the 420 Lifestyle Radio Show. Al Rapp does an amazing job, don't you, sir? And of course, people like me have been huge addicts of the music that comes out of the 420 Lifestyle Radio Show for the years that it's been online. So we love Al, and we're very pleased to be, again, a part of his show. And I hope over time we'll become a bigger and bigger and bigger part. So thank you again to Al and 420 Lifestyle Radio Show for having us and hosting us.
Exactly. Yes.
You bet.
All right, Alison, well, let's get on to our guests. So why don't you tell us a quick little intro and then introduce them?
You bet. Well, actually, we have an activist who's been doing a lot of work out of Ottawa, Ontario, Canada for a number of years now. A legal medical patient like myself, very vocal again like myself, and like many of us speaks out and writes honestly himself on a regular basis, medical letters to members of parliament, politicians of all stripes, and media that will listen. I would like to introduce my good friend and my very dear friend, Russell Barth, and somewhere in the background floating around his beautiful wife, Christine Lowe. Russell, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Hey, you are more than welcome, darling. It's so good to connect again on the Lifestyle Radio Show. I want people to know that the 420 Lifestyle is exactly what we are all about. So, Al, again, thank you.
Yeah, and hey, well, Russell, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on, and we're always interested to hear what you have to say. And we've had you on in the past, and I'm sure we'll have you on again in the future.
Cool. It's great to be here.
And you know what, Russ? The one thing about Russell Barth that I'd love the listeners to know, everybody, is the fact that Russell, whenever you hear his name, is not without controversy. And I love that. Years ago, I came out and I started to tell people that I was causing a lot of trouble when I spoke publicly. And no, my friends, it's not trouble we cause. Like Russell, it's provocative thought.
Well, I try. Not only am I sort of provocative in my own, like in the community here in Ottawa, I'm also kind of controversial in the pot movement as well. Especially, with the last election and everything, there was a schism in the movement as to who thought the Liberals were great and were actually going to legalize pot and who wasn't. And I fell squarely on the as if file side of the, the argument.
I'm going to stop you right there, my friend, because that is not only our hot topic of the night, and we're going to touch on that later throughout the show, but I want to hear your exactly how you feel about this government and what they have promised people in this issue of cannabis. Across Canada. So, but you know what? To start even off, Russell, I thought maybe they'd like to know right back from the beginning how and when you became entrenched in this medical marijuana movement, my friend.
Well, it's actually because of my wife, Christine. We were roommates with benefits in 2002, and we went to visit it was the Million Marijuana March day, but there wasn't a march in Ottawa. It was just a gathering on Parliament Hill. Right. And they had a amplifier and a microphone, and some people got up and talked, and there couldn't have been more than 200-300 people scattered all over the front lawn of Parliament Hill. And we sat and we listened and we smoked some joints, and then we came home. And Christine was very pensive for the next couple of days, just sitting on the balcony, staring out over the city, very sort of uncharacteristically quiet and thoughtful. Right. So I went and I said, "What's all this about? You're kind of moping around." She says, "Well, I think I'm going to quit all of my pharmaceuticals and start using cannabis." So I said, well,
just so our listeners know, Russell, sorry to interrupt you, but what does Christine battle, my friend?
She's dealing with epilepsy and the problems that, arise peripherally from that, like physical pain and anxiety issues and a bunch of problems. Certainly. But mainly it's the epilepsy. So she decided that she wanted to quit using her pharmaceuticals and start using cannabis. And I said, well, that's a good idea, but if we do that, we pretty much need to become public activists about it because, damned if I'm going to be sneaking around the city, the cracks of the city, trying to score medicine for you on the streets. We got to do something like this Compassion Club guy out in Victoria, Philip Lucas at the time, who had just been acquitted for running a Compassion Club. So I said, things are changing, and if we're going to do that, we have to go public. And she says, yeah, that's what I was thinking too. And I said, if we're going to be public, we're going to have a lifestyle that's pretty much above reproach because, we like to eat the way teenagers eat. And if we start telling people, oh, yeah, we're using marijuana for our health, people are going to be like, whatever, sure you are, you pair of schlubs. So we changed our diet that summer and we started using cannabis, sort of more regularly as we could afford it and get a hold of it. Right. We didn't know many people at the time. And then in 2003, January of 2003, CTV News came over to our house, and I did a bong hit on the evening news.
Right. So is that the first time
anybody's done that in Ottawa? I didn't have a license, and I was saying we need a Compassion Club. People need access to this medicine.
Russell, was that the first time that you did a national interview involving cannabis as medicine?
It wasn't really a national interview, although I'm not sure if the story took nationally, but it was the first time I did a TV interview about pot as medicine for sure.
Beautiful.
Of an interview of any kind. So they were pretty happy to have, this kind of controversial topic on the show. And so then that was early 2003. In April 2003, Mike Foster published the book that we co-authored and illustrated, Mommy's
We
Funny
being
Medicine.
you and Christine?
Yeah, Christine. What happened was we both came up with the text for the story quickly, like in one night, because there's not very much there.
Right.
And then Christine did the drawings.
Don't need much, I was just going to say.
Yeah, we discussed, what each image should look like. And I said, just go ahead and draw something and tell me, I'll tell you what I think after. So she did all these great characters, and that was all, pretty much first draft on all those images. She did them, and I'm like, yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly what I was picturing.
Yeah.
So then I took those line works, and I scanned them, and I touched them all up, and I colorized them, and I got it all collated so that it could be printed as a book. So we got it printed out, and just on Mike Foster's color printer at work.
Right.
And I showed it to him and everything, and he's looking at it. I said, what do you think? He goes, I like it. I like it so much. In fact, I think I'm going to publish it myself. So I said, wow, So he says, let me talk to some people. I'm going to figure out how to do this. Because he sells books at his head shop, so like a lot of books, and, comic books and all kinds of weird art books and stuff, too, not just pot books. So he talked to somebody who does the sort of printing and everything, and we published it. So, and it's the world's first children's book.
Just let me stop you there for 1 second. I just want to tell listeners again 3 things. 1, you mentioned your partner, Chris Lowe. Obviously, she battles health conditions like epilepsy, and that was her choice for using cannabis. But also, by trade, she is a graphic artist. Secondarily, Philippe Lucas, whom you also mentioned, is actually a licensed patient, like many of us across the country here in Canada, who happened to start the licensed producer known as Tilray here in Canada, for those who are, again, interested. And thirdly, I forget the last thing now, but there was something else that you had said, and I was just going to alert the listeners to whomever it was that you had mentioned the third time. But it'll come back to me. But I want people to know, Mike Foster owns Crosstown Traffic, a bookstore in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Yeah, and I want people to know that all of these people are very, very involved in the issue here in this country.
Yeah.
So continue on again, Russell.
Thank you. So that was our first outing, as pot users, and we weren't too worried about police hassling us because there's other stuff going on, obviously, and we were medical, so we weren't worried about it. But we hadn't been signed yet. Neither of us had a license yet. So Christine, I think she got signed in 2003, early 2003, and I got signed in late 2003 and got my license in 2004.
These people are very, very involved in the issue.
Yeah. And we were growing in our apartment for a while with Christine's license, it went really well. I mean, we had some good crops, but it was just so stressful. You just worried the whole time about everything. And we couldn't produce as much as we needed. And it was just too much stress and hassle for all things considered.
And a big problem for a lot of licensed patients here in Canada, Russell.
Like we don't really want to grow ourselves, No. We'd rather have professionals doing it for us because we're more doing art at home type people, not sort of gardening all day.
Right.
So then in 2004, I ran in the federal election again in John Baird's riding.
Okay, beautiful.
And I was in a wheelchair at the time because
I ran in 2004 for the NDP. I didn't know that you ran that year.
I ran for the marijuana party. Yeah.
Oh, for the pot party, the marijuana party of Canada.
Yeah,
beautiful.
I got like 430 votes or 450 votes.
That's funny. Go ahead, Russell. I'm sorry.
So, in hindsight, I mean, the election wouldn't have gone any differently anyway that year. But,
right.
Yeah, but Russell, that allowed you. I have my notes here in front of you. Your first television debate.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I was up. I think there was. I think Pierre Poilievre was the guy that was there.
Oh, really?
Wow, and he's a well-known politician here in Canada
creepy
as
little
well. Conservative.
I went up to him when he was being interviewed on CTV one time at Ottawa City Hall. Like he's standing there talking to somebody with a TV camera in his face. I walked right up and I interrupted them. I said, ask them how they're going to pay for all this new prohibition. Ask them how much all this enforcement's going to cost. And then just like all three of the cameraman and the news lady and Pierre Poilievre, they all just stood there with their mouths open. I'm like, go on, ask him the important shit.
Russell, I want the listeners to hear that there are people like you and us and you and myself and others that do this because we are so fed up with how the government has been treating us as political footballs and not just us, but as people in the country, as people of Canada.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I don't even feel like an equal citizen half the time because of categories they throw me in because I choose cannabis as medicine.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I've never really, all through my life, I've kind of been an outsider. I mean, I've had friends and stuff. It's not like I'm a total loner or whatever, but I've never really been part of what you would call the regular mainstream.
The crowd, sure, the in crowd, sure.
Yeah. So we,
but you know what?
In 2005, we got married.
Right.
And we got married.
I remember that, doll.
Well, it was what we call a slam wedding. And what we did is we invited a whole bunch of people, like 100 and some people, but 80 were there. And we told them it's an informal dress, potluck picnic in a park. Just show up in your casual summer wear. And if you want to bring stuff for a potluck, that's cool. You don't have to. No gifts. And starts at this time, and there's going to be a wedding ceremony. And the reception's right there in the park. So we got all the
Gary Lynch and myself and Eugene Oscapella, our attorney friend, were all
Steve
there
Bacon
as well.
brought a potted pot plant to it. So we had the ceremony with these people all around us under this big willow tree and this potted marijuana plant right there in presence. Everybody's smoking joints. My parents didn't really know what to think. Christine's parents were, a little taken aback, but I think they liked it and everything. And everybody had a great time. It was a really nice time.
I remember I said that Gary Lynch and myself and our mutual friend, attorney Eugene the Dream Oscapeller was also there.
Yeah,
so
Eugene was there.
And
it was funny because my parents had some friends visiting from Florida.
Yeah.
And I said, bring them. Yeah, just bring them. Like, no problem. Bring everybody. Bring all your friends. And these people were just astonished after. They're like, we've never seen anything like that in our lives, man. I didn't know weddings happened like that. And so, it was a pot plant there. And the funniest thing was, when they got their photos developed back in Florida, the photos that had marijuana plants in them were cut out of the negative strip, and they never got any prints for them.
No.
Yeah, seriously. My mother told me that after. My mother told me that months later. She goes, my friends got their photos taken away. Cops didn't say anything, but you said that those photos they took were missing. They only got
prohibition at its best.
32 out of 36 back. Hilarious.
Okay, guys, I've got to jump in here. We're getting time for break, pay some bills. All right. So tonight, as we go to our break, we're going to hear a bass guitarist from the cannabis community. Then Alison and I and our guest, RUSSELL BARTH, will get back from the break. We'll quickly discuss who that person is. Then you're listening to the P.A.C.E radio show here at lifestyleradio.ca.
Right on. Can't wait.
The following is a public service announcement from the Canadian Medical Cannabis Partners Society. The Canadian Medical Cannabis Partners Society is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring improved access to therapeutic cannabis and cannabis byproducts in Canada. With a federal government that has committed to legalizing cannabis, we feel it is our duty to ensure that the medicinal use of cannabis doesn't get lost in the process and that there are clear distinctions made between the medicinal and recreational use of cannabis. It is our mission to ensure that government regulation doesn't get in the way of a sick, disabled or terminally ill person's right to use or produce this amazing natural health product. If you would like to get involved, you can contact us on the internet www.canadiantherapeuticCannabisPartners.com, on Facebook, CMCP Society, or search Canadian Medical Cannabis Partners.
This is Al Graham of the P.A.C.E radio show. Are you keeping pace, as in keeping people advocating cannabis education? If you're not, and you're a cannabis consumer, then why not? Others are working hard every day to help educate people about cannabis so you can enjoy your daily 420. Get involved and speak out. Be loud and proud so that you can keep pace. Tune into the P.A.C.E radio show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear about people advocating cannabis education here on lifestyleradio.ca.
Growing your own vegetables, flowers, or even medicinal plants can be a challenge without the right equipment and proper know-how. At BMA Hydroponics, not only are they your urban horticultural experts and suppliers, but their staff holds the customer's needs paramount to making a sale. Family-owned with decades of experience and knowledge, they offer free advice in person, by phone, or email. BMA Hydroponics wants to ensure you have the advice you need, which is why you'll find tips and tricks on different ways to grow, like wick, ebb and flow, drip, or aeroponic system, as well as other helpful links at bmahydroponics.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, just let them know, and they'll do everything they can to get what you're looking for. At BMA Hydroponics, each staff member also possesses a federal exemptee MMAR license, making their strong suit empathy, experience, and dedication to their customers. Because when you know how to grow, you'll have results that make you proud. BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario. Visit bmahydroponics.com.
BMA offers cannabinoid testing, so if you want to prove you've got good medicine, head to BMA Hydroponics and prove it. Hello and welcome back. We are the P.A.C.E Radio Show live here at lifestyleradio.ca. Big shout out to all the listeners who are with us from the other audio outlets such as Spreaker, Mixcloud, and our friends over at TuneIn Radio. Here on the P.A.C.E Radio Show, as you know, we highlight Canadian cannabis advocates, but what you may not realize is that we also like to highlight Canadian cannabis music. So if you'd like us to highlight your music at one of our breaks, as you just heard there, go to our P.A.C.E Radio page found at pace-online.ca and send us a message. Tonight on the P.A.C.E Radio Show, I'm joined by our guest, RUSSELL BARTH, plus by a very busy joint host and a lady who wears many group hats, Alison Myrden. Alison and Russell, you there with me?
Yep. RSO, my friend.
Okay, you two. Bass guitarist in that little music there. That was getting ideas?
I have absolutely no clue.
Russell,
sorry.
I'll throw out a hint there for you, okay? He is from Montreal.
A bass guitarist.
The only Montreal bass player I know is a guy named Alain Caron who plays for a fusion band called Uzeb.
Oh, okay. No, this guy is in our movement, anymore. And you guys all know him as Mark Boris St. Maurice.
Oh Mark, my gosh, I wasn't even thinking of Boris. That's so funny. That's old news. That was when he was in a punk band.
Yes.
years and years ago for our listeners. I'm sure that goes.
It's called Grimskunk.
Yeah, Grimskunk, exactly.
Grimskunk, exactly.
Exactly.
He was with them from 1988 to 1999.
I knew him when he was involved in there for sure. That's around when I met him. That's too funny.
They did a lot of cannabis music, and their albums are covered in it no bit. So
yes. Yeah. Well, again, they were one of the bigger bands at the time, and thank goodness they were out there spreading the word, because I'll tell you, a lot of people were really nervous at the time. So a big shout out to the Grimskunk followers and fans of all their music. So, and all of their band members for sure. So,
all right, guys. Alison, I'll hand the questions back over to you for Russell.
You bet. Thank you so much, Al. Russell, you know what, again, darling, we've been talking because I've known you forever, but I wanted to mention, I don't think the listeners, some of them out there, might even know who you are. So again, what I wanted to do was touch on again why you again are a licensed patient, which you did touch on yourself, and for what exact reasons, which you didn't mention, and that maybe again we can discuss that for a little bit, just your particular reasons for getting involved and what your ailments and medical issues are for choosing this incredibly miraculous healing plant they call cannabis.
Well, I was diagnosed in, it took several years to get the diagnosis complete because it's fibromyalgia. So, it's not something that you just go, oh, look, we took some blood and here's your fibromyalgia in the Petri dish or whatever. I mean, it takes a while to really come up with what the diagnosis is. And the problem is, in the early days too, I was treating myself very badly. I had a very bad diet, and when Christine and I first met, I think it was around March of '98. I was 230 pounds and I was yellow because I was taking so much Tylenol, Robaxacet with Tylenol and codeine there.
Right.
So I was gobbling that stuff like it was food, and I was drinking, and I was using other prescription medications and Gravol, and I was a mess. Right. And the first thing we said to each other, my friend David goes, and this is my friend Russell. Russell, this is Christine. And Christine says, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm completely fucked up on drugs." So that was the first exchange that her and I ever had with each other.
Wow.
And she's like, "What's wrong with you?" So I showed her all my pills and stuff, and because I had a camera bag full of crap with me. And I was a mess. I mean, I stank, and I was yellow, and I was glassy-eyed. If you saw me walking down the street, you'd be like, "Oh, look, that guy's not well at all. He's really sick." And so when her and I got together, we at first we didn't get together until March of 2001 when we started hanging out and friends with benefits kind of thing. And then we figured, she's like, "I have epilepsy, man. I'm having 3-4 seizures a week. I'm not going to live much longer. So we may as well just have some fun." I was kind of fitting myself for a toe tag around that time anyway. I was pretty much fed up with life. So from 2001 until about early 2002, we were just kind of a mess, really, really messy people. And we just weren't taking care of ourselves. And then when we moved to this new place, we said, if maybe we can start growing pot there. Maybe we can pull our lives together. We get to this because we lived in a shitty little apartment, single room. So once we got a 2-bedroom apartment and we could get our lives together, had the opportunity to get our lives together, we did. We changed our diet. I got rid of my sleep apnea in 2 weeks. I had an epic case of sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, stuff like that. I basically wasn't sleeping. The guy wired me up for a sleep test, and he says, "You don't sleep. You're unconscious for 7-8 hours a night, but it's not actually sleep. You're getting no restorative sleep at all.
Wow. And
you never go low enough to actually get
helped you get your sleep back and restore your sleep then,
exactly.
Russell.
So, I was a heart attack waiting to happen at 32.
Yeah.
And so we changed our diet. I immediately lost a lot of weight. I was still in the wheelchair, though.
Right.
And then what happened was, in about late 2005, I think it was, we went to see this specialist who was it was a rehab clinic.
Right.
And I told them, they checked me all out. They did the full sort of gamut of tests and everything to confirm I had fibromyalgia. And then they said, "Well, what you're doing is pretty much what our program teaches people. So there's nothing we can really teach you. You could go through the course here, but it's not going to teach you anything." So I said, maybe if I had for lack of a better term, a big pile of weed, I could get, a little buzz, get past the pain, work with my category 2 walker, extend my distance and this kind of stuff. And they gave me a look like, "Sure, yeah, okay." And then they pulled Christine aside after, and they're like, "No way. He's being totally unrealistic. This is his life now, okay? He's completely atrophied. This is his life. He has to get used to this. Because to try and chase that dream is just going to be
never, my friend. Been there.
So she said, "All right, duly noted." And then when I did get out of the wheelchair, I went back to see this neurologist to see if she would sign for me because the paperwork was still had to be a specialist. And she comes in, she goes, "Where's your chair?" I said, "I don't use it anymore." And her eyes welled up and she slumped back in her chair. And she says, "I got to tell you, man, people who are as sick as you were, they don't come back from that. That's like a miracle that you got out of that chair." And I was never really bum stuck to my wheelchair. I was more tethered to it, but I was shriveled up. I was a shriveled up old guy.
But didn't we say, Russell, this is a miracle plant, and that's what we want our listeners to focus on. So let me change.
I go to make sure your listeners know this much, though, because people have asked me about this. They go, "Oh, my God, pot got you out of a wheelchair?" I say, well, no. As yeast is to bread, a very small component but crucial, pot was important and it helped. The most important thing that got me out of the wheelchair and keeps me out of the wheelchair is my diet. I stopped eating I stopped eating anything fried, anything with a lot of salt in it, dairy, white bread, crap like that. And that, if I had to pie chart what got me out of the wheelchair, more than half of that pie chart would be my diet.
Russell, I know.
Good food and avoiding bad things.
Again, Russell, I do the exact same thing, but I take vitamins, antioxidants, sorry, I can't think of the word, fatty acids, all of these things. But Russell, I want to change everything and go totally off to a brand new topic, if that's okay with you, darling, because I want to spend a few minutes on the next topic. Now, again, I really appreciate you telling the listeners, what you battle in regards to your health. And it is so much, my friend. I don't want you to have to focus on that all the time. I want you to focus on other things. Why don't you tell our listeners again a little bit about some of the other vices or avenues that give you release from all of yours and Christine's daily health concerns, such as we discussed earlier, something that you did publicly in Ottawa for a couple of years that really brought you quite a bit of notoriety.
Which one was that?
Wouldn't that be
the letter
your
writing, yeah.
stand-up comedy routines, my friend?
Oh, stand-up comedy. Yeah, I wouldn't call that a vice. I mean, what happened was in 94, when I first moved to Ottawa, it was early 95. It was April 19th of 1995 that I first went on stage at Yuck Yucks in Ottawa.
Right.
And I pursued comedy for about 18 months. But at the time, I had long hair like I do now, with no beard. And I was talking about pot things and stuff on stage. And I was even told by the manager, he's like, pot humor isn't really that popular. You might want to come up with some better
we'll be right back. I think that
so I was ahead of my time, I guess.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Russell was muted there for a second or two. So.
Okay, you back.
Yeah.
I was muted. I'm back.
You're back.
Hello?
Yep, you're with us, man.
Okay. There you go.
Keep on going.
Okay, so anyway, I started doing comedy, and I was doing some pot humor, and I had long hair, and I looked like a hippie and stuff, and the manager was like, maybe come up with some fresher material because nobody cares about pot. So I guess I was a little ahead of my time. There was other comics doing jokes about pot too, but not as much as me, I guess. And I never really got past opener status in Ottawa.
Yeah, did you not run into a problem, Russell, with your comedy and your cannabis use?
Well, yeah, that was later on when I started feeling better and I got out of the wheelchair and everything. I started doing comedy again in 2007, and in 2008, I was standing outside of a comedy club called Absolute Comedy on Preston Street in Ottawa, and I was about to light up a joint. And one of the other comedians who I knew from around the circuit and stuff, he was working in the kitchen that night, and he was outside having a smoke. And he goes, whoa, could you please just don't light the joint, don't light the joint. I said, well, why? He goes, we already got in trouble from the province thing or whatever. Somebody was smoking a joint out here and the owner got in shit for it. So I'm not telling you what to do, but it'd be really cool if you just didn't do it here, So I said, well, okay, and I didn't feel like he was on my case because he was totally, he was totally down with the whole pot thing. But the bus came anyway. So we just got on the bus and went home, and I was like, that just doesn't sit right at all. And Christine's like, yeah, I don't like that either. So we got home, and I was telling my friend, who was a friend at the time, Tim Meehan, and he says, well, why don't you file a human rights complaint? I said, well, I'm not going to do that against Jason, the guy who owns the club. I mean, he hasn't done me any wrong. He goes, no, not against the club, against the province. I said, I don't know, I understand this. Run me through it. So Tim Meehan actually did all the heavy lifting on that. He did all the work. He scanned through all kinds of stuff and checked all kinds of documents, and he wrote up the whole thing for us about how the federal regulations regarding medical pot use and provincial laws regarding licensed establishments and blah, all that stuff, there was all this overlap, and it was a violation of my rights. Like we found out, for example, if I was driving a car that was my car and I had a license and everything, and I had my medical pot on me, that's fine. But if I was a passenger in somebody else's car, they could be busted for trafficking. Not that anybody would actually get busted for trafficking under certain circumstances, but the way the laws were written, there were all these contradictions that left us sitting in this gray area.
Some of them you have to confirm to be facts, though.
Right, exactly. And the other thing too was, it wasn't so much that it was confirmed to be facts. The whole thrust of the argument was, this is one set of laws. This is another set of regulations. Both are apparently valid, but they contradict each other in a number of places. Here's the list. So we had all the meetings, went through it, and we got a decision on that. It was a half win. The Ontario Human Rights Commission said that we have the right to possess our medicine on the premises or inside licensed establishments, but we cannot use it inside licensed establishments or on the premises. So let's say I'm at a Kelsey's, right, or it's one of these kind of licensed restaurants that you see sometimes on a strip mall, and I'm standing in the parking lot having a joint, and then I go into the restaurant. Well, if some AGCO inspector, right, they just go walking around as civilians, not they have a clipboard and a name tag. If they smell me and I walk in, well, they're just going to lay a fine on the restaurant. Say, well, this happened. You're some guy was smoking a joint in your parking lot, so you lose your license for a week. And they're thinking, geez, that's going to lose me $10,000 worth of revenue. Or I can fight this and it's going to cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Was that involving your
restaurants
comedy,
just take it.
Russell, was that involving your comedy, my friend?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So part of the argument was that this was violating my rights to work. It was violating my rights
That was the main gist of what I was getting at, was that you were trying to be a productive member of society. You were doing everything in your power to be a productive member of society, and this is what the outcome was.
Yeah, exactly. And there was like 6 people standing outside smoking cigarettes. So if I was smoking a joint, it's like, seriously, I'm the one who gets in trouble for this? Well, that's because of the way the laws were written. So when we were into the meeting, God, there was me and Tim and Christine and this lawyer that they had assigned me, this Tony Griffin, who was a law professor from Queen's University, a lady from the, sort of the referee from the commission. There was a lawyer from the AGCO. There was a lawyer from the province. There were 2 people from the federal government and 2 people from the provincial government.
Yes, as always. Government's always very openly.
From the ministries, right? They were representatives of the ministry. So it was really funny because before the meeting, my lawyer and the lady's like, okay, they're going to be in there and we want to keep this all calm and all friendly. And I'm totally casual. I'm like, listen, nobody violated my rights. It wasn't like I got kicked out of a restaurant, right? I'm not going to go in there banging my hand on the table yelling at people. I mean, it's not that kind of a meeting, right? It's just me explaining what's wrong with this. So the whole thing went on for like 4 hours and we were just super polite and super cordial the whole time. And I talked, as calmly and as eloquently as I am now. Didn't get flustered at all. This lawyer from the province was trying to be a little bit snippy with me. He's like, well, they're going to be changing laws for this and that. And I went, well, yeah, and I agree with those new bylaws for not smoking in public, but my right to use my medicine trumps any of those bylaws. It's the charter. What can I say? So everything he threw at me thinking he was being snarky, just boom, right back over the net at him.
Good for you, darling. Good for you.
So, very politely, I handed him his ass. And every time he would get snippy with me, this lady from the province would sort of whisper in his ear. No one else in the room could hear it, but it was all like kind of giving him shit. You could tell she was giving him shit, but we couldn't hear what she was saying. So, and he would look sort of contrite after. And so that was funny. And then, getting back to the comedy and stuff, the other things that happened was in 2007, I debuted my Jesus character.
Yeah.
So I have long hair and a beard.
Hang on, Russell. Yeah, before we get into that, I do have to go for a break here. All right?
I tried a second ago.
Hey, just jump in, try to be kind.
You bet.
Okay, so tonight's featured band is Grim Skunk and their song Autumn Flowers, which we all look forward to, don't we?
You bet.
Then Alison and I and our guest, Russell Barth, will continue this conversation. You're listening to the P.A.C.E Radio Show here at lifestyleradio.ca. You're listening to
Growing your own vegetables, flowers, or even medicinal plants can be a challenge without the right equipment and proper know-how. At BMA Hydroponics, not only are they your urban horticultural experts and suppliers, but their staff holds the customer's needs paramount to making a sale. Family-owned with decades of experience and knowledge, they offer free advice in person, by phone, or email. BMA Hydroponics wants to ensure you have the advice you need, which is why you'll find tips and tricks on different ways to grow, like wick, ebb and flow, drip, or aeroponic system, as well as other helpful links at bmahydroponics.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, just let them know, and they'll do everything they can to get what you're looking for. At BMA Hydroponics, each staff member also possesses a federal exemptee MMAR license, making their strong suit empathy, experience, and dedication to their customers. Because when you know how to grow, you'll have results that make you proud. BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario. Visit bmahydroponics.com.
BMA offers cannabinoid testing, so if you want to prove you've got good medicine, head to BMA Hydroponics and prove it.
The following is a public service announcement from the Canadian Medical Cannabis Partners Society. The Canadian Medical Cannabis Partners Society is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring improved access to therapeutic cannabis and cannabis byproducts in Canada. With a federal government that has committed to legalizing cannabis, we feel it is our duty to ensure that the medicinal use of cannabis doesn't get lost in the process and that there are clear distinctions made between the medicinal and recreational use of cannabis. It is our mission to ensure that government regulation doesn't get in the way of a sick, disabled or terminally ill person's right to use or produce this amazing natural health product. If you would like to get involved, you can contact us on the internet www.canadiantherapeuticCannabisPartners.com, on Facebook, CMCP Society, or search Canadian Medical Cannabis Partners.
Tune into the P.A.C.E radio show and catch Kim Cooper, Debbie Stoll-Skiffen, or Alison Myrden, along with myself, Al Graham, as we talk to Canadian and international cannabis advocates who are working hard to help patients and to end cannabis prohibition. Catch us live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, here at lifestyleradio.ca. Welcome back, and thanks for tuning into the P.A.C.E radio show. We are being broadcasted live at lifestyleradio.ca, along with locations such as Shoutcast, I'll get that right, YouTube, and other social media. As I mentioned earlier, we highlight Canadian cannabis bands or artists. Tonight we featured Grim Skunk and their song Autumn Flowers. These guys' early albums, they were covered in cannabis leaves all over them. They were very open about it. So, and plus they got lots of music. And I should mention that they were the first alternative style rock band to tour to Quebec. I'm sure that you'll find more about them on YouTube. Plus, do a search on Wikipedia. I'm sure you'll find lots of information there about them. Tonight on the P.A.C.E radio show, I'm joined by our guest, champion letter writer. We'll get into that, I'm sure. Russell Barth, along with Joy Toast, Alison Myrden. One thing I like to let you guys are both there, I'm sure, right? You both hear me?
Yep. You bet.
Okay. The stuff that we're discussing tonight, and we were discussing this last segment. Anybody who wants to learn more about Russell, there's no way we can cover all this tonight. We're gonna have to have like a dozen shows, okay? All right, and I'm mentioning this so people can follow up on this. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but at Cannabis Digest, Russell and I, we worked together. We got an article published in Cannabis Digest. It was 2 pages, center section in the printed version, and it's called Ottawa's Pied Pipers of Pot. You can go to the website, you can search for that, Ottawa's Pied Pipers of Pot, and the article will come up, and everybody can read through all this and learn all the stuff that we can't even cover on Russell.
Wow, fabulous. That was a great story, Al.
Yeah. So,
Russell, I wanted to mention, you had actually touched on something that I put a hold on at the beginning of the show, just because it is our hot button issue I'm hoping for tonight. I hope Al will make it our hot button issue. But it's all involving the new government here in our beautiful country of Canada. Personally, what are your thoughts on the new, quote-unquote, hip Liberal government that we have now enacted here in Canada?
A slightly gentler CPC. That's all I can really say. I mean,
Liberal Tory, same old story, my friend.
As soon as the party came forward and said, "Yeah, we're looking at legalized pot or whatever," I said, "No, it's a ploy. I don't believe them." And they campaigned on a promise to do that. But when they were talking about pot, they were saying, "Yeah, pot's great, and it's stupid that we ever criminalized it, so we're going to undo that stupidity." They're saying, "Oh, well, prohibition's a failure, so we've got to do something else to get what we want, which is nobody using pot." They're talking out of both sides of their mouth, which is a very common Liberal Party thing. Yes. We're going to do this, but not do this. We like this, but we don't like it. So it's a lot of Liberal crap, and of course, unlike a lot of pot users, I actually can remember things back past before 2008.
Yeah.
So, this is the same party that gave us MMAR, that fought us tooth and nail in court before MMAR happened, that fought us tooth and nail in court every time MMAR got dragged into court.
Not to cut you off again, Russ, but I want the listeners to know, for those who may not be aware, the MMAR was the first legally licensed medical cannabis program here in Canada, and it was called the Medical Marijuana Access Regulations.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't believe anything this party says. Now when you listen to them talk, they're like, oh yeah, we're going to legalize pot, but there's going to be all these strict regulations and rules and all this kind of stuff. So then you say, well, that isn't what legalize means. That's rejiggering prohibition. So much like the Scientology church, they're changing the meanings of words in the public mind. And the way I've described it to people, part of like you were asking what I do to kill time or get by in the day.
Yes.
I like making art with my Photoshop. So yes. I did one thing where there's this dog with about 10 feet of chain in a really raggedy looking backyard. And I'll say, this is the liberal idea of legalizing marijuana. And then in quotes underneath it says, well, he's out of the cage, isn't he? So this is kind of how they're looking at it. Like, marijuana is so terrible, we have to come up with a regulation to do something about it because prohibition isn't working. So their whole approach is wrong-headed. Now, if I was in government, if I was the prime minister,
Russell,
it would be different. Of course, my whole campaign.
Hang on, Russell. I just have something quick to say before you say that. I, as many of the listeners, if not all of our listeners know, am a retired corrections officer, and I don't necessarily feel that this issue should be placed in the police chief here in Toronto. I don't believe the former police chief, Bill Blair, I don't believe it should be placed in his hands at all. I don't believe police should be the ones making the decisions that are necessary and that are so desperately needed in this country in order to, A, protect the children. And I know that we don't all agree on that, but I feel as a law enforcement officer, as I've said on the last show and many times before, I do not personally want to see a 12-year-old child walking up the street with access to marijuana, smoking a joint. Secondarily, I also want people to know, too, that because of all of these things that the Liberal government are doing, no, we don't necessarily agree. But again, we do agree that it should not be involving law enforcement, whatever they decide to do. And that my suggestion, as Al Graham and I were talking earlier, we both watched Power of Politics, and Rosie Barton speak of this earlier on her show on CBC News. We actually feel that maybe it should be treated more like alcohol and tobacco, and that people be given the choice.
I disagree wholeheartedly.
I'll tell you why.
I disagree, and I'll tell you why. Is that people who say, "Well, I don't want my kids having access to marijuana. I don't want it being sold in convenience stores." Well, okay, they'll buy it in the parking lot outside the convenience store. They'll buy it at school. They'll buy it at the park. That ship has sailed. You don't want your kids using pot? Try being a parent. No point.
What I touch on quite often on the alcohol end of it all is that
you cannot categorize.
You can have your specialty grow stores. Specialty producers of strains. Just like you have micro growers, right? That are growing that are brewing micro beers, specialty beers. You have people growing specialty strains. And as we know here in Ontario, we can brew and make as much wine, unlimited amounts. So I have no problem with being able to grow an unlimited amount of cannabis.
I agree, Al.
That's I look at that, and as I don't know if most people, but some people don't realize that we can grow 30 pounds of tobacco per adult in a residence. So a couple, you can grow 60 pounds of tobacco legally in our country. So why can't we do the same thing with cannabis?
Well, here's the thing, though. Okay, if you look at marijuana from a standpoint of chemistry and botany, okay. And physiology of humans, marijuana is more categorized along with things like chocolate, coca beans, coffee beans,
No.
coca leaves.
You know what though? I have to speak up here, Russell, because marijuana, cannabis, which I prefer to call it because that's its proper name, has something called tetrahydrocannabinol that does alter your state of consciousness.
Yeah, well, so does
Not
chocolate.
again,
So does
seriously enough to be of a concern to adults. But again, I do not think that children on their own, under a certain age, know how to react to those sorts of situations.
Well, they have
nor
been
do
for
I
about
ever
40
see
years,
them
Alison.
want to have
They
to
have been for
decide.
40 years. Kids have been smoking pot. Most people start 12, 13,
You know
14
what?
years old. And
No, they
it's never
don't,
gonna change.
Russell. And I can guarantee you that most of our listeners don't start at 12 years old.
Most
Lot of
people
the
I know
men
started early.
that do partake in this as you know, a social inebriant. But I can tell you that a lot of the women that I know, like myself, who, you know, use it, you know, for other reasons as medicine, let's say, even as a social or a spiritual, what do you call it? Inebriant or whatever. But as a spiritual, anyway, bottom line is, I don't think, again, Russell, that children should be made to be put in those positions. That's exactly
Well, don't give them money. You know, anybody. I mean, here's the thing: you're worried about. You're acting like pot is more dangerous than all the other things that kids already have access to. Any kid with a handful of money can walk into a grocery store or a convenience store and buy a can of Red Bull, which is way more
Red Bull, all those type
way
of
more
stuff.
dangerous than cannabis.
Yeah.
Now, let me finish this though, okay?
Yep.
The thing is, it doesn't matter whether pot is safer or less safe than tobacco or Red Bull or coffee or chocolate. The point is, if it's not available inside the convenience store, it will be available outside the convenience store.
No, Russell,
listen,
one last thing on that note that I'd
a
like to say is that we can fight this till the sun goes down every day for the rest of our lives, as I do with many people around the world. But my big fight, and this is what I want people to understand, is the reason we are having these conversations to begin with is because of something called prohibition. We need to end that and stop the nonsense. And that's all I wanted to say.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, we got to. Yeah. No, I know. No.
Yeah.
It's everybody. Everybody has.
What I would do if I was the government, I would, especially federal, I would just back off and say, you know what? Pot is off the federal regulations. It's the province's problem now.
I agree, and provincially it should be looked at. We spoke of this many times as medicine.
I think that's going to happen.
But then,
too.
No matter how they regulate it, the provinces would be obliged to regulate it according to the court rulings, according to the charter, and then the federal government, like the Liberal Party, can say they can take the benefit, they can take the credit for all the benefits. And they can wash their hands of any problems that might arise because they'll say, well, it's a provincial problem. You see, that would be the smartest way for them to legalize pot is just take it off the federal jurisdiction, say that they give each province like 6 months or whatever to regulate pot the way they see fit. In compliance with the charter, of course.
We've been suggesting that to the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and many people in Parliament since the Liberals took office. So as long as our listeners are, again, listening up and want to be a part of this movement and make themselves and their voices heard, they too can write Justin Trudeau, tweet him, Facebook him, message him, email him, write him a letter, an old-fashioned way, whatever you want to do. Snail mail on back. You know where to find him in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, at the Parliament buildings. Please step up and do your part, people.
That's right, exactly. As the soundbite says in the commercial, everybody's got to get up and speak and have a exactly. So, but, we got another 5 minutes here, Alison. So
you bet. I was going to say, Russell, there's so much to talk about, but again, I know that Al is just bursting at the seams and would love to go in detail about the letter writing campaign that you were on a number of years ago, again, that we touched on when you first met. If you wouldn't mind going into a little more detail for our listeners, that is how a lot of people all around the world know of you, my friend, is because of the incredible and brilliant letters, and again, highly controversial, as you can see, everybody. I love this.
What happened was in about the autumn of 2003. I guess I forget what happened, but I just started writing more letters, and I guess I had a way with words or whatever, because they started getting published pretty often.
Yes.
But I would send the same letter. Like I'd type out one letter because there was an article in the National, right across CanWest or right across whatever. So I would send it to every newspaper in all the different cities that had, the Sun newspaper or whatever. So I might get the same letter published in different places with slight variations. And it was late 2003 that I really started getting them published sort of, every week. And then I just kept at it because you get a taste for it. So I would skim through the news feed, and I would see the articles. I would read some article or somebody else's letter, and then I would just write a quick reply. And then I just kept getting published like crazy. So I found that after 8 years of that, I had 830 things published.
Unbelievable. And I thought I was busy.
The most published letter to the editor writer of any topic in Canadian history.
Yes, I remember.
So that was pretty weird. And it's maybe the fourth most published letter, anti-prohibition letter writer in the world. So, for Sharp's got like thousands.
Can I
I've
just
only got
interrupt for a
800.
second again, Russell? I was just wondering, Al, is that when you started to write your story on Russell?
I wrote the article about Russell for Cannabis Digest a couple of years ago. I haven't got the date right in front of me here.
Right. Okay.
But as far as his letter writing, that was something that, like, even here where I am in my little small community, our local newspapers were were publishing his letters as well.
Fabulous.
I was sending them to everybody.
And where do you live, Al?
Where am I? I'm in Southern Ontario here. Near the Belleville area.
Like me, right?
We didn't talk about Pottawa yet.
And his letters would appear in our newspapers. I see them online all the time. And then during the interview for the article, you're like third or something for all letters across North America.
Wow!
Like it was
Congratulations, Russ.
Thanks.
Hey, that's awesome, buddy.
Yeah.
But you know what? Again, Al, Russell, everybody out there in Radio Land, one thing I love about the 420 Lifestyle Radio show is that we can talk about this being our lifestyle. This is what we all do every day, all day, Russell, just like yourself. There are so many of us out there that fight this, including the other two gentlemen, Al Rapp, Al Graham, myself, so many of us, the other hosts, Debbie Stoltz-Giffen, Kim Cooper, so many people, Al, that we all know pitch in and do something. Yep. But again, just before the show ends, I want people to know it's really important they get on top of the Liberal government in Canada at this time and speak up and say how you feel this should be resolved. Because together, we will make a difference.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's got to speak up, get the word out there. Okay, as before we wrap up here, Russell, is there some website, a person, place, thing you'd like to highlight? Maybe let people know where they can find you?
Well, people can go to russellbarth.ca. Mm-hmm. And 2 S's, 2 L's, BARTH, and that has a link to just about all my other activities. There's a YouTube page. Just put Russell Barth into YouTube. You'll find my pages. And we have a new thing coming up next Tuesday. It's a new talk show on YouTube called Pottawa, and it's going to be
very excited about that.
Yeah, it's going to be a half-hour show, 6 p.m. every Tuesday night. We're broadcasting live from Buzz On, which is the first public vapor lounge in Ottawa, marijuana vapor lounge in Ottawa. And there's another vapor lounge, but it's more of a private type of deal. So this is the first public one in Ottawa, and it's been going off and on since May. And they've been open again since October. And so we'll be broadcasting live from that's going to be our home base, but we also might be broadcasting from places like
So do you have a website or a place they can go to, an address, Russ? Or do you have, what's your YouTube website, for example, again? Do you want to say it for the listeners?
Well, it's my YouTube website. It's just Russell Barth. You'll find me on YouTube and russellbarth.ca. And watch for Pottawa. You can find that on Facebook too.
2 L's.
Correct. 2 S's, 2 L's. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for this, Russell. It's been great talking to you. Like I said earlier, we're going to have you back on again. There's so much that we could cover what you've done, and we'd like to share that with people. So thanks a lot for having me. Okay, just a reminder to let everybody know that I will be back next Wednesday with my joint host Kim Cooper and our scheduled guest Johnny V of Skunk Magazine, as we continue to promote those who are working hard to bring an end to cannabis prohibition. You can find P.A.C.E on Twitter at P.A.C.E Radio, and you can also like the P.A.C.E Radio show on Facebook. We can be found on the web at pace-online.ca, or you can find us by searching for People Who We Are, and that's people advocating cannabis education. Thank yous go out to our sponsor, the friendly and helpful folks at BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario, Al Rapp of LifestyleRadio.ca. Also, a big thank you to our guest, Russell Barth. And don't forget to catch his show on YouTube. And to my joint host, Alison Myrden.
Yay!
Plus, a big thank you to you, our listeners.
Right on.
For tuning into the program. Thank you, and good night.
Amazing.
So what are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.